Hi, good afternoon, everybody. I welcome you all to this 1 hour webinar on COVID-19 and its impact on the Indian economy. It's really good to have you all. Um, and as we move ahead, I would like to run a few checklist items in order to get the best out of this webinar. First, I request all the participants to remain on mute at all times. Ask questions as soon as you have one. You can place your comments and questions on chat and we will take it up from there. So very quickly introducing you to Strengthscape. We are an organizational transformation and development company headquartered in Bangalore, India. We help organizations create mechanisms for development, motivation, commitment, creativity that enable employees to give their best every day. We've also partnered with Wiley for everything disk products, central tests for psychometric assessments, Skillsoft for their off-the-shelf e-learning content. Our various offerings, as you can see, are behavioral training, competency mapping, technical training, psychometric assessments, and many others. For this webinar, we have partnered with Unicomply, and we have Mridul Agarwal from the firm, who's a chartered accountant and lawyer by profession. And through his lens, we will understand how the pandemic has changed the Indian economy. Now, diving right into today's webinar, I request Mridul to take the webinar forward. Over to you.
Thank you, Aishani, for the kind introduction. A very warm welcome to all the participants to this webinar. First and foremost, I just hope that all of you are staying home and all of you are staying safe. Before we deep dive into the impact of COVID-19 and the subsequent economic stimulus brought out by the government, I just request my team to run a quick poll to understand the background of the participants here, which will help me curate the webinar a bit better. So I request all of you to please participate. I just request everybody to tell me what your background is like. I don't think we have got everybody who has voted. Can I request all the participants to cast their votes? It helps me to curate the session a bit better. Right. So I think we will stop the polling right now. We have gotten approximately 66% of the people who have voted. And out of that, I think we have a healthy mix of entrepreneurs, employees, professionals, as well as CEOs, CFOs of SMEs present here. So thank you for your participation in the poll. Right. So to continue with the webinar, I think COVID-19 is something which not many of us could anticipate. And it was just out of the blue that COVID-19 shook the entire world. Many have described this as a black swan event. It took the entire world by surprise. Not only did it cause a huge loss of life, but also damaged many economies to such an extent that there's talk of recession throughout the world, and economic activity has come to a screeching halt. And as regards the future, no one knows when this is going to end. Right here in India, we have seen a lockdown spread across multiple phases, which has gone on for close to 2 months now. And right now, we are in the middle of Unlock 1.0 or 2.0, as it is popularly being called by everybody. And this is being done to ease the economic burden. And while it's completely understandable that a country like India cannot bear the burden of a lockdown for a very long time, uh, the lockdown was needed to bring in a a semblance of balance to uh, to get the health sector right. But as we could see that many people were affected by the lockdown, especially migrant laborers, employees, many entrepreneurs, SMEs, and this led to a big economic disruption. So for how long will the after effects of COVID-19 will last? Well, no one knows that. It's expected that the effect of COVID-19 is going to last for another year or so, or maybe even more. No one has an answer for sure. All right. Just a few uh, indicators about the impact of COVID-19 on the Indian economy. I think COVID-19, and I think this is something which most of you would be knowing, that COVID-19 has had a big impact on the demand. Firstly, because economics is purely demand and supply. We have seen factories closed, workplaces closed, people have lost jobs, incomes have vanished overnight, because of which people have cut down on spending. And quite naturally, when people cut down on spending, the demand goes down, and when demand goes down, it's the supply which is hit. So this has a cascading effect on the economy. And because of falling demand, there has been a supply chain disruption because of forced lockdowns, materials not moving, raw materials not reaching the factories, finished goods not reaching the end markets. And this in turn has caused a lot of stress on the banking and financial sectors. Like it or not, banks are the backbone of the Indian economy. And when people are not taking money or are not spending money, it will have a big stress on the banking sector, especially MSMEs who have taken loans for doing business. But because of low sales, they have been unable to pay back the loans to the banks, and hence a big stress on that sector. And consequently, when you have decreased demand, it has a direct impact on government revenues as well, because one of the most important sources of revenue for the government is taxation. And when you don't consume, the tax revenue also falls down. And when revenue for the government falls, uh, consequent spending on the healthcare sector, infrastructure, etc., also reduce. Uh, Many people have many big organization companies basically will be allowed to bid for government projects up to 200 crores. No foreign companies shall be allowed. There were a few other interventions for MSMEs. There was e-market linkage for MSMEs to promote their products and services. Financial technology would be used by the government to reach the remotest corners of the country. Also, uh, it was a conscious move by the government to ensure that MSMEs get their dues from government and central public sector enterprises within 45 days. So, for this particular mode, the government has introduced a website known as MSME Samadhan, if I'm not mistaken. And if any MSME needs any sort of has a dispute with any sort of a government agency where their funds are blocked, they can just approach that resolution panel and get their funds released in 45 days. Now, this is just a summary of what we have discussed. How is it going to help the MSME? uh, the amount of money to be put into the hands of MSMEs. It's going to help MSMEs expand their size, their capacity. It will also help them increase their production levels, which will again contribute to creation of jobs. This is going to help the companies pay off their employees, not just old salary dues, but can also pay them for the upcoming months. And by disallowing global tenders, the government is actually trying to make India a more self-reliant country rather than relying on foreign companies. There were other measures to boost the business in the country. A few points which need to be highlighted was especially the reduction in the PF contribution by the employer and employees. So earlier it was 12%, but now it was reduced to 10. So any employer covered under the PF regime will have to contribute just 10% of uh, provident fund, 10% of the salary as provident fund to the accounts of the employees. So what this does basically is put a lot of money into the hands of the employer, which can be used for any other purpose which they want to. Uh, Also, there were a few credit guarantee which were given for MSMEs. Uh, this is especially true for real estate companies. So what happened is there was a law known as RERA, Real Estate Regulation Authority, which was passed by the government. And by this, all real estate companies have to register under this. All right. Now, because of this particular law, the infrastructure or the construction companies are under uh, deep stress because they're supposed to complete construction of projects under a given timeline. If you don't, you have to pay a certain amount of interest to your buyers. But because of COVID-19, many of the construction laborers who were migrants from other states went back to their homes, and the construction activity came to a big halt. Now, what the government has done is extended timelines under RERA, thereby giving a big respite to real estate developers and construction companies. Uh, Other measures by the RBI, they have reduced their cash reserve ratio, which basically ensures that there's more liquidity in the market to the tune of 1,37,000 crores. The RBI has also announced special refinance facilities for major financial institutions like NABARD or SIDBI to a total of 50,000 crore rupees. Also, the moratoriums on loans for the principal and interest portion is a big booster for the economy. Uh, a few of the direct tax measures which the government took for the benefit of the companies and people at large were that it extended the due dates once more. First of all, for filing of income tax returns for individuals and HUF and other class of SSEs from 31st July to 30th of November. Similarly, the due dates for filing returns for companies and other tax audit cases was extended from 31st October to 30th November. Tax audit cases were extended from 30th September to 30th to 31st of October. Also, assessments, the scrutiny cases, which usually happen with departments, get time barred. These dates were extended by 3 months. One small point, the Vivad Se Vishwas scheme, which I had spoken about earlier, has been extended to 31st of December 2020. So if any of the MSMEs have any sort of disputes with the income tax department, they can get it solved without payment of any interest or penalty up to 31st of December 2020. Other measures in the direct tax regime were reduction in TDS and TCS rates. I think this was a major move under the direct tax route to put more money in the hands of MSMEs, by in the sense that earlier, if you were supposed to deduct, let's say, 10% of someone's money and pay them a certain amount, all right, you don't have to deduct 10%. You have to deduct 7.5% because that has reduced by 25%, thereby ensuring that the other guy is getting 25% additionally earlier. All right. So the TDS and TCS rates have been reduced, and this is expected to release liquidity of up to rupees 50,000 crore in the market. Also, the government has cleared long pending refunds to charitable trusts, LLPs, and non-corporate businesses and professions. So this is a situation wherein any sort of liquidity in our hands uh, will play a big role in bringing financial stability. And refunds from the government, uh, timely refund from the government, is a big liquidity booster. These were the revised TDS rates, it was reduced by 25%, basically. The next benefit, which was in the form of Mudra Sishu loans. So what is a Mudra scheme? Basically, Mudra scheme is a scheme by the government wherein money is provided to budding entrepreneurs. All right. Uh, Collateral free loan of up to 10 lakh rupees is provided under this scheme. And there are three categories under this: Shishu, Kishore, and Tarun. So what basically happens is that if I'm an entrepreneur who has just started off business and I require a loan of up to 10 lakh rupees, I can apply under the Mudra scheme and get some sort of funding from the government. What is the benefit of this? You get loans at much lesser interest rates when compared to other categories. The government offers a 2% interest rate subvention for a period of 12 months, which means you have to pay 2% below the market rate if you borrow loans under this particular scheme. The next particular move by the government to ease the uh, doing of business in the country was under IBC. So what is basically being done is that they have enhanced the threshold from 1 lakh rupees to 1 crore. So basically what this means is that if you haven't paid anybody else and the total dues are, less than 1 crore, no one can file a case against you under IBC. Otherwise, earlier it was up to 1 lakh and many MSMEs were dragged to the IBC route. And this led to winding up of many, many businesses. The next move by the government, which is of the greater benefit for MSMEs, is that many provisions under the Companies Act of 2013 were criminal in nature, in the sense that if you have not filed certain reports or there is a procedural lapse on your part, you would have to pay fine, and a few of the offenses would attract a criminal penalty by which you could be sentenced to prison. Now the government is planning to decriminalize a few of the sections under the Companies Act. It is estimated that around 58 sections are going to be decriminalized under the Companies Act. And this is going to boost the ease of doing business in the country. Why? It's because entrepreneurs are known for their risk-taking ability. And if that risk-taking ability leads you to prison, then obviously no one is going to take that risk. So decriminalization is going to lead a majority of the entrepreneurs to again start taking risks. A few of the other reforms which have been introduced by the government is that private companies can list their non-convertible debentures on stock exchanges without actually being called as a listed company. A few other specialized benches of NCLAT have been created for faster resolution of disputes. All of this has led to India's increased rise in the ease of doing business rankings. I think we are currently in the early 70s on the ease of doing business rankings. We have seen a jump of close to 100 ranks in the last 3 to 4 years, if my memory serves me right. A few other uh, provisions which the government has introduced: a new policy which will ensure private and public sector participation has been launched by the government. And the government is actually opening up many, many sectors to the private sector. For example, as a part of the Atmanirbhar Bharat scheme, the government opened the defense sector, the power sector. Just recently, the coal auctions were carried out, which would open up the coal sector to private sector for the very first time. And this is to ensure that if there's more privatization, wasteful administrative expenditure is reduced and more private companies can come in and generate more and more jobs in an efficient manner. Also, quite a lot of corporate law measures were introduced by the government as a part of the Atmanirbhar Bharat scheme itself. The earlier way of incorporating a company was completely revamped, and a new form known as the Spice Plus form was introduced, wherein 10 different services belonging to different ministries were combined into one single form. So basically, if you have to incorporate a company, earlier you had to file various forms. PF, ESI had to be separate, TAN would be separate, PAN would be separate. But now, by filing just one form, you can get your GST registration, you can get your PAN, TAN, ESI, PF all at one place. The government has also withdrawn almost 14,000 prosecution cases under the Companies Act 2013. So, what has been observed in the past is that most of the government departments were very uh, were very enthusiastic in sending out notices, not just under the Companies Act, but also under other laws like income tax or GST. And it was this over enthusiastic attitude which scared entrepreneurs away. Now, the government has sent out a clear message by withdrawing almost 14,000 prosecutions. So, this was probably the last slide of my presentation. I wanted to keep it short and crisp. So, yes, I hope you could take away something important from this particular webinar today. If you do have questions, I will be taking them now. You can, if you have questions, do place them in the chat window. I will be happy to answer them.
Hi, Guru. I just see your chat. The presentation will not be shared. We will share a recording of the same, and the team will work on the recording and will be shared post today's session.
I think Susmadeep Bhakat has a question. Any e-certificate will be provided or not?
I have responded to that.
All right. Thank you. Very informative, especially for a non-finance person. Mr. Guru has a question. What do you forecast for our economy? Well, Mr. Guru, I think the economy is anyway in the doldrums right now because of the lockdown and the health impact of COVID-19. But I think a few indicators from the past 1 week or so, especially the indicators with respect to fuel consumption or electricity consumption, clearly indicate that people have started going out and have started consuming a few important goods and services, and this has led to a revival of the economy. And many people have said that India as a country, India as an economy is at 75% of the level, is at 75% of the pre-COVID levels in a few important sectors like fuel or electricity or infrastructure. So I think we are on the right path, but uh, majority of the sectors, especially hospitality, the hotel industry, the education sector, has been affected deeply, and it will take some amount of time to to come to rebound. We can't expect a V-shaped recovery curve almost instantly. This way, I expect it to take at least a year for the economy to reach the levels it was before COVID happened. All right. So Mr. Prashant Rai has a question. Is less making bootstrap startup categorized under stressed MSME loss making? Well, uh, A bootstrapped MSME or a startup may not be categorized uh, as an NPA. The classification of an NPA depends on the banks. And is it categorized under stressed MSME loss making? Well, if you're if you're an MSME which is loss making, and you need a loan or a working capital loan or something, you have to go into detail about the 3 lakh crore scheme or the other 50,000 crore fund of funds which were launched. There are certain eligibility conditions there. So if your MSME gets covered in that, then you can avail a loan from the banks or financial institutions. And if you want us to do a sort of an assessment for you, we would be glad to do an assessment for you for your particular startup, whether you're eligible for this sort of a loan or not. I hope I was able to answer your question. The next one is by Mr. Salim. How can one gauge how badly have the MSMEs been hit due to COVID? I think, Mr. Salim, I've tried to answer that question at the very beginning of my presentation when I said that almost 50% of MSMEs have been badly hit. Across, no one can give you a clear cut number as to this number of MSMEs are affected, but everyone can give you a percentage. So, like I said earlier, approximately 50% of most of the MSMEs have been affected. So, for example, in the restaurant sector, it's estimated that close to 40% of the uh, restaurants are about to shut down. Now, 40% may be a large number or a small number, I don't know, but that is what the government is saying. So there's no clear-cut number there. The next question was by Mr. Guru. Is the uniform form for TAN, PAN, and GST in progress? Yes, Mr. Guru. The Spice Plus form has been introduced, and if you want to incorporate a company, you can use that form. I think we are doing that for quite a few clients of ours who want to incorporate a company or an LLP. Do feel free to reach out to us if you want to. It's not accepted at the office as the officials themselves are not aware of it. So this is an online form, Mr. Guru, and we have already started implementing, rather we have started incorporating many companies using this particular form. The other Spice, and this Spice Plus form, there are a few criteria which as to who can use it and who cannot. But the Spice Plus forms have been launched, and many companies are using it for their incorporation purpose. Yes. Is there any other question which any of the other participants would like to ask? Uh, am I expecting any GST taxation modification in COVID-19 situation? Well, uh, I don't foresee any reduction in tax rates in the GST regime. Probably a couple of products or services here and there may undergo a change, but at a broader level, a tax cut or a tax increase in the shorter run is not expected because the government has a big shortage of revenue there. So we are expecting it to continue as it is in the foreseeable future. Do I foresee the employment going up in the current scenario on the industry like hospitality, travel, aviation, and other service related industries? Many MSMEs are associated with it. Well, to be very honest with you, uh, do I see the employment going up? It's directly proportional. So if the hospitality or the travel sector opens up, then obviously it's not that people are immediately going to start traveling. It's not that people are immediately going to go and stay in hotels or in big 5-star hotels or 3-star hotels. The answer is Very simple, it's because of safety reasons. I mean, why would you want to risk your family's safety, especially with number of COVID-19 cases on the rise? So people will, I expect the people to start traveling probably from this year end, when the COVID-19 cases start subsiding and the sense of normalcy starts to return. But how quickly does a sense of normalcy return is something which no one can guess. And the aviation sector has started. So let's see what the government does. How much period is required to recover for the MSME due to COVID-19? Well, again, that is something which no one can predict, including me. My estimation is that uh, it will take a minimum of 5 to 6 months, and this can even go up to a year or more than 1 year. What more do you think the government will do or should do to boost MSMEs? So, well, I think the government has done quite a lot already uh, to help the MSME sector with the help of the Atmanirbhar Bharat scheme and so on and so forth. While many people, the critics may call it a smokescreen and devoid of any substance, but actually what the government is actually trying to do is concentrate on the supply side economics rather than just giving cash into the accounts of people. All right. So, what additionally can the government do to boost MSMEs? I think the government should come out with more easier laws to make doing of business easier. I was just reading an article the other day which was comparing India and China, unfortunately, given the crisis which is going on right now. And they said that in China, the process of starting a business is very, very easy. And entrepreneurs can start a business in as little as a month. And when I say a month, it refers to setting up your factory building with land acquisition and everything in place in 1 month. In India, it takes easily between 6 months to 1 year to set up your own factory and start manufacturing. So there's a lot of change which has to happen, and laws especially have to be reformed, especially laws like land acquisition laws or labor laws. Labor laws in India are very, very strict, and they place a lot of liability on the employer themselves. So I think there is a need to rationalize the laws and bring in greater clarity and make doing business easier. That is my particular view. I think that is what the government should be doing. So the next question: self-employed persons who have just started their own consultancy services are not getting any personal loans from banks. What is the hope for them? Unlike employees, they cannot even survive with salary cuts. I think I completely echo the sentiment in the sense that banks are really skeptical in lending money. No matter how much the government launched the 3 lakh crore scheme, banks are still skeptical of lending money for the simple reason that when banks lend, it is based on your balance sheet. So if you have a strong balance sheet, the bank is going to lend money. Otherwise, they're not. So uh, unfortunately, there are still many small teething issues to be solved, but still we are moving in the right direction. It always has to follow a top down approach. So the government has made the right move. It will take time to percolate down to the lower levels. I was just talking to one of the bankers I know, and we use this particular bank's services for our clients as well. We've recommended them to go there, and they were not willing to lend money to many people for the simple reason that their balance sheet pre-COVID was very, very weak. That was just one reason why they outrightly rejected the loan request of a few MSMEs they went to. So, is there hope for employees, for employers rather? I'm afraid the only hope is that uh, you know the banks start lending money, they open up, and the situation resumes back to normal as early as possible. Uh, do you have any info on the labor laws as well as any measures on contractual labor and builder works related reforms? Well, the government, as far as I know, is in line to revamp the entire labor law structure in the country. But as you know, India is a more, if I'm not mistaken, it's already been tabled in the parliament, but it's just not received approval from our parliamentarians for the simple reason that the laborers are a potential vote bank, and any sort of move which takes away the labor rights or anything to do with tweaking the labor laws is met by a lot of protest. So, bringing out a new labor code will take time, but it will happen eventually. There are so many things launched by the government of India, but it cannot be implemented on the ground due to complications, stringent action, or rules. So, how will you see and correlate it to the Hardello? I really didn't catch that word, to the growth, to the GDP of the Indian economy. Well, a very valid point raised by you. A lot of schemes are there in the country. It's just that it's the implementation where we lag. Like I was telling you, the comparison between India and China. It's said while I should not be saying it considering the kind of situation we are in. But I think the Chinese have done a far, far, far better job of implementing laws and helping businesses set up their factories there. And that's the reason why China is the factory of the world. So it's this attitude of the Sarkari attitude of taking things very, very slowly, which has to be done away with. It, it will take time. Let's just hope for the best. So, if there are no more questions, I would like to thank all of you for staying tuned and asking a lot of questions. We have a whole set of webinars coming up over the course of the next 1 month. I will probably share the dates with you. The next webinars planned are on, if you're an MSME and stressed how to optimize your cost, what is costing, we will tell you all about that. If you are planning on filing your income taxes, there are quite a few changes which have happened. So please do stay tuned for that particular webinar. Uh, Wondering how do you stay invested, where to invest to make money during COVID-19, please stay tuned to get a few investment tips and advice. And lastly, something very, very important for many MSMEs, how to manage your working capital and cash flows amidst this pandemic. So do stay tuned and do register for our upcoming webinar in large numbers. Over to you, Aishani.
I think you covered it. All right. Thank you so much, everybody, for being a participative audience and for all those questions towards the end. And of course, thank you, Midul, for such a wonderful webinar. Hoping to meet the next set of batch on 30th June with cost optimization. Yeah, I think that's that.
Thank you, everybody.